The metal collar around Lee Daeho's neck felt heavier today. He stood in the gray processing center with 200 other humans, all wearing the same dirty work clothes and the same dead look in their eyes. 3 years in the mining colonies had taught him to keep his head down and follow orders. But today was different. The Vorthak guards were excited. Their massive 9-foot frames clicked and chittered with their strange language as they moved between the human prisoners. Their black eyes, all 6 of them on each alien head, gleamed with something that made Daeho's stomach turn. He had learned to read their moods over the years. This was the look they got when they found something amusing. "Attention, livestock!" The translation device around the lead Vorthak's neck crackled to life. The alien's name was Krextar, and he was the worst of them all. "You have been selected for a great honor. You will participate in the great hunt." The humans looked at each other with confusion and growing fear. Daeho felt his daughter Subin grab his arm. She was 23 now, but the mining colonies had made her look older. Her engineering skills had kept them both alive this long, but he could see the terror in her eyes now. "The hunt is simple," Krextar continued, his mandibles clicking with what passed for laughter among his kind. "You will be released on a world far from here, a beautiful world with forests and rivers. You will have basic supplies and tools. You will even have a full day before we follow." Dr. Park Ji-woo stood near Daeho in the crowd. The older man had been a xenobiologist before the invasion, and now he worked in the alien medical facilities. His eyes met Daeho's, and there was something there. Not fear, but calculation. Park had been studying the Vorthak for 3 years, learning everything he could about their biology and behavior. "This is entertainment for the Empire," Krextar announced. "Citizens across 1,000 worlds will watch as our greatest hunters pursue you through the wilderness. Some of you may survive several days. The record holder lasted 6 days before we caught him." A woman near the back started crying. Daeho recognized her as Kim Hae-ri, one of the colony medics. She was tough, but everyone had their breaking point. The Vorthak loved it when humans cried. It proved to them that humans were nothing but weak prey animals. "We are not animals," Daeho said quietly, but his voice carried in the silent room. Krextar's head snapped toward him. All 6 eyes focused on the former Korean Space Navy captain. "What did you say, livestock?" Daeho felt every human in the room looking at him. Subin squeezed his arm tighter, trying to stop him from speaking. But something inside him had finally broken. Not his spirit, but his willingness to stay silent. "I said we are not animals," Daeho repeated, louder this time. "We are human beings." The alien approached him slowly. Krextar was enjoying this moment. The other Vorthak guards moved closer, their weapon arms ready, but they would not kill Daeho. Not yet. Dead prey was no fun to hunt. "You think you are more than food?" Krextar asked. "Your species fell in 6 months when we invaded your worlds. Your mighty fleets burned like paper. Your soldiers ran like frightened children. What makes you think you are anything but prey?" Daeho looked around the room at the other humans. These were miners and doctors, engineers and farmers. They had been beaten down for 3 years, forced to work until they collapsed, fed just enough to keep them alive. But they were still human. They still had something the Vorthak would never understand. "Because we learn," Daeho said. "Because we adapt. Because we never give up." Krextar made a sound like grinding metal. Laughter. "We shall see, Captain Lee." "Daeho! Yes, we know who you were. We know all of your histories. Your former rank will not help you in the forest. Your human pride will not stop our weapons. You will run and hide and die, and the galaxy will watch and be entertained." The guards began herding the humans toward the transport ships. But as they moved, Daeho noticed something. Dr. Park was moving through the crowd, speaking quietly to certain people. Kim Hae-ri had stopped crying and was listening carefully. Sergeant Yoon Tae-min, a former Marine who worked in the vehicle bay, was nodding at something Park was saying. They were not just randomly chosen prisoners, Daeho realized. Park had been preparing for something like this, the quiet conversations. In the mining tunnels, the way certain people had been practicing skills that seemed useless for mining work, the small items that had gone missing from the alien medical facilities. Subin looked up at her father as they were pushed toward the ships. "Dad?" What do we do? Daeho looked at his daughter, then at the other humans around them. They were scared and tired and beaten down, but they were also engineers and soldiers and doctors and farmers. They were human beings who had survived 3 years of slavery. They had learned things about their captors that the Vorthak did not know they had learned. "We survive," he told her, "and then we show them what human beings can really do." The transport ship was dark and cramped. 200 humans packed together for the journey to their hunting ground. But in the darkness, people began to move. Dr. Park made his way to where Daeho sat with Subin. "Captain," Park whispered, "we need to talk, all of us. I have been preparing for 3 years for something like this. I know things about them. Weaknesses. I know how we can fight back." Around them, other faces appeared in the dim light. Yoon Tae-min, Kim Hae-ri, and others. People who had kept their skills sharp even in the mining colonies. People who had been quietly preparing. "They think this is a hunt," Daeho said quietly. "They think we are prey animals who will run and hide until they catch us." "What do you think we are?" Park asked. Daeho looked around at the faces of his fellow humans. Scared, yes. Tired and beaten, yes. But still human. Still capable of the deal. One thing that had made their species survive everything from ice ages to alien invasions. "We are problem solvers," Daeho said. "We are tool makers. We are the species that climb to the top of the food chain on a world full of predators because we never stopped learning how to fight back." The ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace, carrying them toward the world where they were meant to die for alien entertainment. But in the darkness, plans were being made. Skills were being shared. Hope was being kindled. The Vorthak thought they were transporting prey to a hunting ground. They had no idea they were delivering 200 humans, who were about to remember what it meant to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The jungle world smelled like death and growing things. Daeho crouched behind a massive tree trunk, listening to the sounds around him. Somewhere in the canopy above, something with too many teeth was calling to its pack. In the distance, he could hear the low hum of Vorthak hovercraft moving through the forest. It had been 2 days since the drop. The aliens had kept their promise about the 24-hour head start, but it had not been enough time to get far. The jungle was thick and full of dangers that the Vorthak had not bothered to mention. They probably thought the local predators would do half their work for them. They had been wrong about many things. Subin crawled up beside him, her face painted with mud and plant juice that Dr. Park had said would confuse the alien sensors. She carried a spear made from mining tools. They had smuggled in their supply packs. Her engineering mind had already improved the basic design twice. "The trap is ready," she whispered. "Kim Hae-ri says the vine toxin should work on their nervous systems the same way it works on the local animals." Daeho nodded. Dr. Park's 3 years of studying Vorthak biology was paying off in ways their captors had never imagined. The quiet doctor had discovered that for all their advanced technology, the aliens had the same basic weaknesses as most carbon-based life forms. They needed to breathe, they needed to eat, and their nervous systems could be disrupted. The sound of hovercraft was getting closer. Through the trees, Daeho could see the red glow of Vorthak hunting lights. There were 3 of them in this group, moving in formation like they were hunting animals that would run in panic when they saw the lights. But the humans were not running anymore. Sergeant Yoon Tae-min appeared like a shadow at Daeho's other side. The former Marine moved through the jungle like he had been born there. 3 years of mining work had not dulled his military training. If anything, the anger had made him sharper. "Choi Min-ho is in position on the north side," Tae-min reported. "Kim Hae-ri has the medical station ready. We have 15 people in the trees with spears and rocks. The rest are at the backup positions like we planned." Daeho looked at these 2 people who had once been strangers. Subin, his daughter, who had become a warrior engineer in just 2 days. Tae-min, who had turned a group of scared miners into something that could fight back. All around them, humans who had been slaves were becoming something else. The first Vorthak hovercraft entered the kill zone. The alien pilot was scanning the ground with his hunting sensors, looking for the heat signatures of running humans. He found them exactly where they were supposed to be. False heat sources made from mining equipment that Subin had rigged to look like terrified people hiding in the bushes. The Vorthak opened fire with energy weapons, burning through the jungle. Cover to reach his prey. The sounds of destruction would bring the other hunters quickly. They would want to be part of the kill, but when the shooting stopped and the smoke cleared, there were no human bodies, only broken equipment and empty ground. That was when the trees came alive. Humans dropped from the canopy on woven vine ropes, landing on the hovercraft like they had been training for this their whole lives. Spears found the gaps in Vorthak armor that Dr. Park had identified. Rocks struck the weak points where their exoskeletons joined together. The alien pilot tried to throw off his attackers, but Subin had already jammed a mining tool into his hovercraft's engine. The vehicle spun out of control and crashed into a tree. The second and third hovercraft arrived just in time to see their colleague being dragged from his crashed vehicle by what they had thought were helpless prey animals. The pilots opened fire, but the humans had already melted back into the jungle like ghosts. What followed was not a hunt. It was a lesson. The Vorthak had superior weapons and armor and technology, but they were hunting in a jungle that the humans had been studying for 2 days. They were fighting an enemy that had learned to use every advantage the environment could provide. Choi Min-ho had been special forces before the invasion. He knew how to set up ambush points and killing fields. Kim Hae-ri knew which plants were poisonous and which could be used to treat wounds. Dr. Park knew exactly where to hit a Vorthak to cause maximum damage, and Subin knew how to turn their own technology against them. The first alien hunter died when he stepped on what looked like solid ground, but was actually a pit filled with sharpened mining tools. His death scream brought his partner running, directly into a snare that left him hanging upside down from a tree, while humans with spears closed in from all sides. The third hunter was smarter. He stayed with his hovercraft and used its weapons to blast apart anything that might hide an enemy. He called for backup on his communication device. He followed proper military protocol. It did not save him. Subin had been listening to their communications for 2 days, learning their language and their procedures. When the hunter called for help, she was ready with jamming equipment made from salvaged parts. When backup tried to respond, they found only static on their channels. And when the hunter tried to retreat, he discovered that his hovercraft would not start. The humans had learned to sabotage Vorthak technology faster than the aliens could adapt their defenses. Tae-min found Daeho after the fighting was over. 3 dead Vorthak hunters, 3 captured hovercraft, and not a single human casualty. It was more than they had dared hope for. "How many are watching this?" Daeho asked, looking at the recording devices they had taken from the alien equipment. "Dr. Park thinks millions," Tae-min replied. "This is being broadcast live across their empire. Entertainment for the masses." Daeho looked at the camera device in his hands. Somewhere out there, millions of aliens were watching what they thought would be a simple hunting expedition. They had expected to see humans running in terror until they were caught and killed. Instead, they were seeing something else entirely. "Let them watch," Daeho said to the camera. "Let them see what happens when you hunt human beings. We are not your prey. We are not your entertainment. We are the species that conquered a world full of predators with nothing but sharp sticks and stubborn refusal to give up." He looked around at his fellow humans. They were dirty and tired and scared. But they were also something else now. They were hunters. They were soldiers. They were human beings who had remembered what they were capable of. "You wanted to see a hunt," Daeho continued, speaking directly to the alien audience he could not see. "Now you will see one. But we are not the prey anymore." Subin appeared at his side, holding a Vorthak energy weapon that she had already figured out how to modify. Around them, other humans were learning to use alien technology with the speed that had always been humanity's greatest advantage. "Dad," Subin said quietly, "there are more hunters coming. A lot more. The broadcasts are making this popular entertainment. They are sending their best teams." Daeho smiled for the first time in 3 years. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized it was no longer alone. "Good," he said. "Let them come. We have a lot to teach them about what it means to hunt humans." Above them, the alien broadcasting equipment continued to transmit to an audience that was beginning to understand they were not watching the entertainment they had expected. They were watching the birth of something that would change the galaxy forever. The rain fell in sheets across the jungle, turning the ground into mud and making every sound echo strangely through the trees. Admiral Threxmore stood in his command ship, watching the display screens that showed the hunting ground below. What he saw made no sense. For 3 months, the humans had not only survived, but thrived. They had built hidden bases throughout the jungle. They had turned the planet's dangerous wildlife into allies. Most impossible of all, they had killed 47 of the Empire's best hunters while losing only 12 of their own number. "Report," Threxmore commanded his aide. "The human called Lee Dae-ho has organized them into military units," the aide responded, his voice shaking. "They have communications equipment built from salvage parts. They coordinate attacks across multiple locations. They set traps that would challenge our best military engineers." Threxmore studied the tactical display. Red dots showed where Vorthak hunters had died. Blue dots showed estimated human positions. The pattern was clear to anyone with military training. The humans were not running randomly through the jungle. They were fighting a war. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Our intelligence reports said they were miners and farmers. Slaves with no military training. Some of them were military before the conquest," his aide admitted. "But analysis suggests they are sharing knowledge at an unprecedented rate. A former engineer teaches combat tactics. A former soldier teaches electronics. They learn from each encounter and adapt their methods." On the main screen, a live feed showed Choi Minho leading a raid on a Vorthak supply depot. The human moved like a shadow, appearing and disappearing among the trees, while alien guards fired at empty air. Behind him, other humans carried away weapons and equipment that would be turned against their former owners within hours. "They are not fighting like prey animals," Threxmore observed. "They are fighting like soldiers." "Yes, Admiral, and they are winning." The words hung in the air, like an accusation. Across the Empire, billions of citizens were watching what was supposed to be entertainment. Instead, they were seeing the impossible. Humans, the weakest and most pathetic of the conquered species, were defeating Vorthak hunters in open combat. Worse, they were enjoying it. Lee So-young had figured out how to hack into the Vorthak communication networks 2 weeks ago. Since then, the humans had been intercepting military traffic and learning about reinforcements before they arrived. They knew about supply drops, patrol routes, and hunter formations hours before the aliens made their moves. But the intelligence they gathered had revealed something more frightening than tactical information. The humans had learned they were not just entertainment. They were a test. Dr. Park found Dae-ho in the main camp, studying captured Vorthak equipment with the intensity that had made him a successful naval officer. Around them, humans worked on weapons and supplies with the efficiency of a military unit that had been fighting together for years instead of months. "I have analyzed the communication intercepts," Park reported. "The Empire is divided on what to do about us. Some want to end the hunt and exterminate all humans immediately. Others want to study us to understand how we fight so effectively." Dae-ho looked up from the alien weapon he was modifying. Subin had taught him basic engineering, and he was learning to improve Vorthak technology in ways its makers had never considered. "And what does the majority want?" he asked. "They want to see if we can be broken," Park replied. "Admiral Threxmore has been given unlimited resources to crush our resistance. If he succeeds, humanity will be classified as a minor threat and enslaved permanently. If he fails, the Empire will vote to exterminate our species completely, every human on every world. They are afraid of what we represent." Around them, the sounds of preparation continued. Kim Hae-ri was teaching field medicine to a group of former miners. Yoon Tae-min was drilling new arrivals in military tactics. Subin was working with a team to improve their communication systems. "They should be afraid," Dae-ho said quietly, "because we are going to show them something they have never seen before." The attack came at dawn, just as the humans expected. Threxmore had brought 100 hunters, military-grade equipment, and orbital support. It was meant to be overwhelming force that would crush the human resistance in a single devastating blow. It was exactly what Dae-ho had been preparing for. Vorthak attack formation was perfect for fighting conventional enemies. Hovercraft moved in coordinated sweeps while ground troops advanced behind energy shields. Orbital weapons prepared to blast apart any fixed defensive positions. But the humans were not conventional enemies, and they had no fixed positions to defend. The jungle itself had become their weapon. Subin had spent weeks rigging the trees with explosive devices made from mining charges. When the Vorthak hovercraft flew through the canopy, entire sections of forest exploded around them. Vehicles crashed into carefully placed obstacles that appeared from nowhere. Choi Min-ho led attack. Teams that struck from impossible angles. They appeared behind alien lines, eliminated targets, and vanished before reinforcements could respond. The former Special Forces operative had turned a group of former slaves into something that fought like elite commandos. Kim Hai-ri used her medical knowledge to deploy biological weapons that targeted Vorthak physiology specifically. Poisoned darts that caused paralysis, toxic powders that disrupted their breathing, healing compounds that kept wounded humans in the fight, and Dr. Park had saved his greatest discovery for this moment. The Vorthak had a weakness they did not know existed. Their neural communication system, the network that allowed them to coordinate. Their actions could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies. Subin had built a device that could broadcast those frequencies across a wide area. When Park activated the neural disruptor, the effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthak soldiers stopped mid-attack, clutching their heads and screaming. Pilots lost control of their hovercraft as their coordination disappeared. The perfectly organized military formation collapsed into chaos as individual aliens lost the ability to work together. Threxmore watched from his command ship as his overwhelming assault turned into a disaster. Human teams moved through the disrupted. Vorthak forces like predators among helpless prey. They captured weapons, vehicles, and prisoners with an efficiency that spoke of careful planning and perfect execution. "Retreat," he ordered. "Pull all forces back to orbit." But retreat was not an option. Lee So-young had hacked the Vorthak communication system so completely that she could override their command codes. When Threxmore tried to call his forces back, his own equipment transmitted different orders. The hunters found themselves cut off from support, surrounded by enemies who knew the terrain better than they did, and facing opponents who had learned to use Vorthak technology better than the Vorthak themselves. By nightfall, the great assault was over. 93 Vorthak hunters were dead. The remaining 7 were prisoners. Not a single human had been killed, though many were wounded. But the real victory was not the tactical success. It was what the billions of alien viewers had witnessed. Dae-ho stood in front of a captured Vorthak communication array broadcasting live to the entire empire. Behind him, his fellow humans worked efficiently to secure weapons and supplies from their defeated enemies. They moved with the confidence of natural predators who had found their proper place in the food chain. "You came here to hunt human beings," Dae-ho said to the camera. "You thought we would run and hide and die for your entertainment. You were wrong about everything." He gestured to the humans around him, former slaves who had become warriors, engineers who had become tacticians, doctors who had become weapons designers. "We are not prey animals," he continued. "We are the species that conquered our homeworld by outthinking every predator that tried to hunt us. We are the species that reached the stars by solving problems that seemed impossible. We are the species that adapts and learns and never gives up." Subin appeared at his side, holding a device that had been built from captured alien technology, but improved beyond anything the Vorthak could have imagined. It was a transmission system that could reach every human on every slave world throughout the Empire. "The hunt is over," Dae-ho announced. "But the war is just beginning. To every human who can hear this, remember who you are. Remember what your species is capable of. The galaxy is about to learn why Earth's apex predators were never the ones with the biggest teeth or the sharpest claws." He looked directly into the camera, and his smile was the smile of a hunter who had found worthy prey. "We are coming for you," he said. "All of you. And when we are done, the only question will be whether you deserve the mercy that you never showed us." The cargo ship New Seoul drifted silently through the asteroid field, its hull painted black to blend with the cosmic void. Commander Oh Jin-wook floated in the zero gravity of the converted cargo bay, watching his crew make final preparations for the mission that would change everything. 6 months had passed since Daeho's transmission from the hunting world. The broadcast had reached every corner of the Vorthak Empire, and the response had been immediate and overwhelming. Human slaves on a dozen worlds had risen in rebellion. Mining colonies had become military bases. Cargo ships had been converted into warships. The Empire was burning from within. "Status report," Jin Wook commanded through his helmet radio. "Engineering reports ready," came Subin's voice from the engine section. She had escaped the hunting world 3 months ago with a small team, carrying technical specifications for every piece of Vorthak equipment they had captured. Now she was part of the space-based resistance, turning human ingenuity against their former masters. "Weapons systems operational," reported Park Hyeon-soo, the strategic mastermind who had developed what they called the Soul Protocol. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humans had attempted before. Simultaneous strikes against Vorthak command centers across multiple star systems. "Medical bay ready for casualties," added Kim Hae-ree's voice. The former colony medic had become an expert in treating combat injuries in zero gravity, skills that were unfortunately in high demand. Jin Wook looked through the cargo bay windows at the Vorthak supply convoy approaching through the asteroid field. 6 heavy transport ships escorted by 12 military vessels. Under normal circumstances, it would be suicide for a converted cargo ship to attack such a force. But these were not normal circumstances, and the humans were no longer the same species that had been conquered 3 years ago. "Remember," Jin Wook spoke to his crew, "we are not trying to destroy them all. We take what we need, send the message, and get out. The real target is their confidence." The new Soul had been a mining ship before the rebellion. Subin had converted its mineral extraction equipment into weapons that the Vorthak had never seen before. Plasma cutters became energy cannons. Ore processing units became missile launchers. The ship's industrial manipulator arms had been turned into weapons platforms. "Initiating attack run," Jin Wook announced. The cargo ship dropped out of stealth mode directly above the convoy. To the Vorthak sensors, it appeared from nowhere like a ghost ship materializing from the void. The alien crews had seconds to react before the human weapons opened fire. But these were not the random attacks of desperate slaves. This was a coordinated military operation planned by humans who had learned to think like their enemies. The first salvo destroyed the convoy's communication array, cutting them off from reinforcements. The second salvo disabled the escort ship's engines, leaving them helpless to maneuver. The third salvo was aimed at specific cargo containers that human intelligence had identified as containing critical military supplies. The Vorthak fought back with everything they had, but they were fighting an enemy that had studied their tactics for months. Every weakness Dr. Park had identified was exploited. Every predictable response was countered before it could be effective. Within 20 minutes, the convoy was captured. The surviving Vorthak crew members found themselves prisoners of the species they had considered livestock. But the real victory was not the supplies they captured or the ships they disabled. It was the data they retrieved from the convoy's computers. Park Hyeon-soo studied the intelligence reports while the new Soul retreated to a hidden base in the outer system. What he found confirmed their best hopes and worst fears. "The rebellion is spreading faster than we predicted," he reported to Jin Wook. 17 worlds are in open revolt. The Empire has lost control of 3 major industrial centers. Their military is stretched thin, trying to contain multiple uprisings. "And the bad news?" Jin Wook asked. "Empress Jax Ara has authorized the final protocol," Hyeon-soo replied grimly. "Complete extermination of the human species, every man, woman, and child on every world. They plan to sterilize entire planets rather than risk the rebellion spreading further." The command center fell silent. Even in zero gravity, the weight of that information seemed to press down on everyone present. The Empire had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. "How long do we have?" Jin Wook asked. "The extermination fleets are already mobilizing," Hyeon-soo replied. 6 months, maybe 8 if we can delay them." Subin's voice crackled through the communication system from the engine room. "That is not long enough to evacuate the slave worlds. We have millions of people scattered across dozens of systems." "We are not evacuating," Jin Wook said quietly. "We are liberating." He called up the tactical display showing the current state of the rebellion. Red zones marked worlds still under Vorthak control. Yellow zones showed contested systems. Green zones indicated successful human liberation. The Soul Protocol was designed for this scenario, he continued. We always knew they might try genocide, so we prepared to hit them first. The plan was massive in scope. Coordinated strikes against Vorthak command centers, industrial facilities, and military bases across the Empire. The goal was not just to free human slaves, but to cripple the alien war machine so completely that they would be unable to carry out their extermination plans. Contact all resistance cells, Jinwook ordered. Tell them Operation Liberation begins in 72 hours. Every ship, every weapon, every human who can fight. We hit them everywhere at once. Over the next 3 days, messages flowed through hidden communication networks that Subin had established across multiple star systems. Former slaves who had become engineers shared weapon designs. Former soldiers who had become miners taught combat tactics. Former civilians who had become warriors prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of their species. On the hunting world, Daeho received Jinwook's message with grim satisfaction. His jungle fighters had become the core of a growing army that now included liberated humans from 6 different worlds. They had turned their prison into a military academy where former slaves learned to become something their captors had never imagined. Are we ready? Subin asked her father. She had returned to coordinate the ground assault that would support the space-based operations. Daeho looked around at the humans preparing for battle. They wore armor made from captured Vorthak equipment. They carried weapons that combined alien technology with human innovation. They moved with the confidence of natural predators who had found their proper place in the galaxy. We have been ready since the day they made the mistake of hunting us, he replied. The first strikes began simultaneously across 17 star systems. Human teams that had spent months learning Vorthak security procedures walked through alien facilities like they belonged there. Mining charges that had been carefully placed over weeks of preparation brought down critical infrastructure in minutes. Cargo ships that had been secretly converted into warships appeared from hyperspace around major military bases. Industrial equipment that had been turned into weapons opened fire on targets that the aliens had thought were perfectly defended. But the most devastating attacks were the ones the Vorthak never saw coming. Dr. Park's neural disruption technology had been refined and improved over months of testing. When the coordinated electromagnetic pulse hit Vorthak command centers across the Empire, the effect was catastrophic. Military coordination collapsed. Communication networks failed. The precise organization that had allowed a relatively small number of aliens to control dozens of worlds simply stopped working. In the chaos that followed, human resistance cells struck with surgical precision. They freed slave populations, captured weapons and ships, and established secure zones that could resist counterattack. Empress Jaxara watched from her palace as reports poured in from across the Empire. 17 worlds in rebellion. Industrial. Production down 60%. Military response crippled by the neural disruption attacks, and everywhere the same message broadcast on every communication channel. We are coming for you. How is this possible? She demanded of her advisors. They are a primitive species. We conquered their homeworld in months. They learn, Empress, her military advisor replied. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Every tactic we use against them, they find a counter. Every advantage we have, they find a way to neutralize. Then we destroy them all, she snarled. Send the extermination fleets to every world with human populations. Burn them to ash. The fleets are already mobilizing, Empress. But there is a problem. What problem? The advisor activated a communication display. On the screen appeared a human face that had become known throughout the Empire. Li Daeho, the former slave who had sparked a galactic rebellion. Empress Jaxara, Daeho said, speaking directly to her across the light years. You made one critical mistake when you decided to hunt human beings for sport. You taught us everything we needed to know about you. Your weaknesses, your fears, your technology. Behind him, other humans worked with captured alien equipment, modifying and improving it in ways the original designers had never intended. You want to exterminate our species? Daeho continued. Then come and try. The Vorthak homeworld had never seen war. For 1,000 years, It had been the center of an empire that conquered other species with overwhelming technological superiority. The great cities with their towering spires had been built to celebrate dominance, not to withstand siege. General Kang Seul-gi stood on the bridge of the battleship Incheon, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. Around her ship, a fleet of 300 vessels moved in perfect formation through space that had once belonged to their enemies. Some were captured Vorthak warships, improved and modified by human engineers. Others were converted cargo ships and mining vessels, transformed into weapons of war by people who had learned to turn any tool into a means of survival. "Status report," she commanded. "All ships report ready," came the reply from her communications officer, Lee So-young. The former slave had become the backbone of human military communications, coordinating attacks across multiple star systems with equipment she had learned to build from salvaged parts. "Orbital defenses neutralized," reported Commander Oh Jin-wook from the lead assault ship. His teams had spent weeks infiltrating the homeworld's defense network, using the same techniques that had allowed them to capture Vorthak supply convoys throughout the Empire. "Ground forces ready for deployment," added Colonel Nam Soo-bin, who had become one of humanity's most effective military commanders. Her engineering background had made her a master of siege warfare, capable of breaking through defenses that had been thought impregnable. Seul-gi studied the tactical display showing the planet below. 2 years of war had led to this moment. The Vorthak Empire was collapsing, its military scattered across dozens of rebellious worlds, its industrial capacity crippled by human sabotage. But the war would not be over until the homeworld itself fell. "Remember," she spoke to the fleet, "we are not here for revenge. We are here to end this war and ensure it never happens again. Minimum civilian casualties. Our target is the military command structure and the imperial government." The invasion began with surgical precision. Human ships that had learned to fight like pack hunters struck the orbital installations that protected the planet. But these were not random attacks. Every target had been carefully selected based on intelligence gathered by resistance cells that had been operating on the homeworld for months. Dr. Park Ji-woo's neural disruption technology, now refined to devastating effectiveness, swept across the planet's communication networks. Vorthak military coordination collapsed as their hive mind. Communication system failed. Individual units found themselves cut off from command, unable to coordinate their defense. But the real shock came when the landing ships reached the surface. The humans who emerged were not the broken slaves who had been taken from Earth 3 years ago. They moved with the confidence of natural predators who had learned to hunt the hunters. They carried weapons that combined the best of alien technology with human innovation. They fought with tactics that no military academy in the Empire had ever imagined. Captain Lee Dae-ho led the assault on the Imperial Palace. The man who had once been forced to mine ore for his captors now commanded a battalion of former slaves, who had become the most feared soldiers in the galaxy. Behind him marched humans who had learned to turn every disadvantage into an advantage, every weakness into strength. The palace guards fought bravely, but they were fighting an enemy that had studied their every weakness for years. Dr. Park's biological weapons targeted their specific physiology. Soo-bin's engineering teams had prepared counters for every defensive system. Choi Min-ho's special forces units appeared in places the defenders had thought were impossible to reach, and throughout the battle, the humans demonstrated the quality that had made them the apex predators of Earth. They never stopped learning. Every Vorthak tactic was analyzed and countered within minutes. Every new weapon was captured and improved before the next engagement. Every defensive position was turned into a trap for the defenders themselves. Empress Jax-Ara watched from her throne room as her empire collapsed around her. The reports, coming in from across the galaxy, told the same story everywhere. Human forces were not just winning. They were winning with an efficiency that spoke of perfect planning and flawless execution. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked her military commander. "Less than 100, Empress. The humans have captured or destroyed the rest. They are using our own vessels against us, and they have improved them beyond our original specifications. How many worlds remain loyal?" "None, Empress. The last holdout surrendered this morning. The humans have liberated every slave world in the Empire. They have also freed the other conquered species, the Zephyrians, the Crystalline Collective, the Hive Worlds. All of them have joined the Human Alliance. Jaxara felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Not just for her own life, but for the continued existence of her species. The humans had proven they could not only fight, but win. The question now was whether they would show mercy to their former oppressors. The throne room doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris walked a figure that had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Lee Daeho wore armor made from captured Vorthak equipment, improved and modified by human engineering. Behind him came the other leaders of the human rebellion. Dr. Park Ji-woo, the scientist who had found their enemies' weaknesses. Commander Oh Jin-wook, who had turned cargo ships into warships. Subin, whose engineering genius had made impossible victories routine. They were flanked by representatives of every species the Vorthak had conquered. Humans had not fought this war alone. They had united the galaxy's oppressed peoples into an alliance that had proven stronger than the empire that had ruled them. Empress Jaxara, Daeho said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had led his species from slavery to freedom. Your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed. Your worlds have chosen freedom over oppression. The Empress raised herself to her full 9-foot height, trying to project the dominance that had once made her species the rulers of the galaxy. You think you have won, human? You think defeating us makes you the new masters? You will learn that ruling an empire is harder than conquering one. Daeho studied her for a long moment, then did something that shocked everyone in the room. He smiled. Not the predatory smile of a conqueror, but the weary smile of someone who had fought a long war and was ready for it to end. We do not want to rule your empire, he said. We want to make sure nothing like it ever exists again. Behind him, representatives of a dozen species stepped forward. The Terran Alliance, they called themselves. Not an empire built on conquest, but a federation dedicated to protecting the freedom of all sentient species. You will be tried for your crimes, Dr. Park announced. But you will receive fair trials according to the laws of civilized beings. Your people will be given the chance to join the new galaxy we are building, or they can isolate themselves on their homeworld if they prefer. And if we refuse, Jaxara demanded, then you will find out what happens when the galaxy's apex predators decide that a species is too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing. Daeho replied quietly. But I do not think you will make that choice. Your people are not evil, Empress. They were simply following leaders who forgot that every sentient being deserves freedom. The trial of the Vorthak leadership was broadcast throughout the galaxy. But it was not the revenge that many expected. The humans and their allies followed their own laws, giving their former oppressors the fair treatment that had never been shown to the slaves. Some Vorthak leaders were executed for their crimes, others were imprisoned, but most were given the chance to help build a better galaxy, working to undo the damage their empire had caused. 6 months later, Daeho stood in the memorial gardens on the former hunting world. The jungle had been partially cleared to make room for monuments to the humans who had died in the rebellion. But most of the world remained wild, preserved as a reminder of where the war for galactic freedom had begun. Subin found him there, watching as young humans and aliens trained together in the facilities that had once been concentration camps. They were learning to be protectors instead of predators, guardians instead of conquerors. The Council of Free Species has approved the new constitution, she reported. Every world will govern itself, but all will be protected by the Alliance. No species will ever be enslaved again. Daeho nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. And what happens when the next empire rises? When the next species decides they are superior to all others? Subin smiled, and it was a smile that would have made any predator in the galaxy think twice about threatening the innocent. Then they will learn what every hunter who has ever targeted humans has learned. We are not prey. We are the species that protects prey from predators. Around them, the sounds of training continued. Humans teaching aliens how to fight. Aliens teaching humans about technology and culture. A new generation growing up in freedom, prepared to defend that freedom against any threat. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would not be forgotten. The most dangerous predators are not those who hunt for dominance or sport. The most dangerous predators are those who hunt to protect others from harm, and in the memorial gardens.